It is also being reported that Papandreou has suggested, why don't you try to use envoys to NATO, to the European Union, and to the Arab League. Perhaps a solution to the crisis in Libya could be found there, as the European Union and the United States, through NATO, are trying to impose a no-fly zone and enforce sanctions, which will practically strangle the regime economically and politically. So therefore, I think Gaddafi has taken note of this and has sent out these envoys, obviously one to the Arab League and to the Egyptian junta, another one to Malta, which is quite a voice in the European Union coming from the Mediterranean basin, and another one, now we have confirmation also, AlJazeera can say that Catherine Ashton, who is the High Representative of the European Union in diplomacy affairs, she has confirmed that the Libyan delegation is in Brussels as we speak and is engaged with the European Union with regards to the message Gaddafi would like to convey before the meetings, which are scheduled to be held between Thursday and Friday in Brussels. Now, there's another delegation which has proceeded over to Lisbon in Portugal. Now, we are expecting now the same minister who was in Malta, that's Taher Siala, to come out and say what message he's conveying and who he's meeting in Lisbon.
OK, Carl, thank you very much indeed. Carl Stanio Navarra there with the latest on the diplomatic manoeuvrings. Now, the UN Human Rights Council has expelled Libya and called for an investigation of alleged abuses. For more on that, let's speak to Manfred Novak. He's an independent human rights expert and the former UN Special Rapporteur on Torture. Joins us now live from Geneva. Thank you very much for being with us. So, what do these kind of investigations actually entail?
I think it's an overall investigation about the latest human rights violations committed by Gaddafi forces in Libya in order to see what actually happened, in order that the Human Rights Council can then afterwards take further action.
I mean, it's interesting, isn't it, that Gaddafi in the last few days has issued an invitation to the UN and the EU to come in and have a look. How seriously does the UN take that kind of invitation, and is that the kind of investigation that they would get involved in?
Of course, I mean, it is the Human Rights Council who has, on the one hand, excluded or suspended the membership of Libya in the Human Rights Council, which was confirmed by the General Assembly, and asked for a thorough, independent investigation. That means by experts to be appointed by the Human Rights Council's president. This is ongoing, and I expect that this high-level investigation team can be dispatched to go to Libya, but also to Tunisia, Egypt, etc., in order to carry out its investigations as quickly as possible. Whether this is... sorry.
No, carry on.
Yes? Whether this now coincides with a specific invitation by Colonel Gaddafi is a different issue, but of course this is an independent investigation by independent experts of the Human Rights Council according to their own terms of reference.
I mean, given that there is still fighting going on, though, would these investigators be sent at the moment? And if they're not, and presumably they might not necessarily be allowed in, might they?
That is, of course, possible. Of course, you can also carry out investigations by going to the Tunisian-Libyan border, speaking to all those refugees coming from Libya. There are all kinds of ways and means how you can conduct such an independent investigation. But, of course, it's always the best to go on the spot and to get, of course, the invitation and also the acceptance of the Mr. Gaddafi and those who are in power.
And how quickly do you think that this information can be gathered, and what then happens with it?
This information will be gathered. Usually such a fact-finding mission can be carried out within a week or so. And then, of course, they have to report back to the Human Rights Council. The Human Rights Council is presently in session in Geneva. It's an ordinary March session. And perhaps already the results can already be taken up then. Or there might be another special session as it was convened in order to deal with the situation in Libya as quickly and effectively as possible, and we should say this is a very positive way how the Human Rights Council has taken up this very serious issue of gross human rights violations.
OK, Manfred Novak, thank you very much indeed for taking the time to talk to us.
Thank you, all the best.
Now, the death toll from Tuesday night's clashes between Muslims and Christians in Cairo has risen to 13 people from both sides. 140 were wounded. The violence has prompted further protests by Coptic Christians in Egypt's capital, Cairo. More than 1,000 Copts were demonstrating on Tuesday against the torching of a church when violence broke out. Egypt's Prosecutor General has launched an investigation into the clashes. Also in Cairo, there have been clashes between rival protesters in Tahrir Square. Witnesses claim a group of, quote, thugs attacked people still camping in the square. The attackers reportedly carried knives, machetes and whips. The witnesses say there were no police on the scene to break up the confrontation. Anti-government protesters in Yemen remain defiant despite the death of at least one man. Security forces opened fire on a crowd of demonstrators outside Sana'a University on Tuesday night. Mostly student protesters have been camped out in front of the university since mid-February. Still ahead.
Our first views of Space Shuttle Discovery as it bears down on the Kennedy Space Center, the 2 air data probe.
The Space Shuttle Discovery ends its 39th and final mission as the world's most travelled spaceship. We'll be speaking to an astronomer about the shuttle's legacy.
Welcome back to International Weather Forecast. Well, across the Indian subcontinent, not a lot to talk about in the way of clouds or rain. What we are seeing, though, are those high temperatures coming into play as we go from Thursday as well as into the weekend. We are looking at Nagpur, about 38 degrees, Kolkata, about 35 degrees for them. Chennai is also 37, so we are getting into those mid-30s. This is right before monsoon season begins in just the next couple months. So dry conditions, but very warm conditions indeed. As we take our way down to south parts of Africa, well, we are looking at an area of low pressure in the Mozambique Channel. Now, this one right here could potentially be a cyclone. We don't expect it to be anything major, but the major heavy rain is going to be coming out of this, affecting parts of Mozambique as well as Madagascar. So we're going to be seeing some flooding along with this area of low pressure. Also, some nice conditions down to the south. Temperatures have come up for Johannesburg, about 31 degrees, and Durban looking about 30. Well, across the Arabian Peninsula, temperatures are also coming up. We are looking at Doha, seeing temperatures of about 30 degrees, but just look up towards the north. You see this area of rain right here. This could possibly be affecting Doha as we get into the weekend. Maybe a little light showers there, but also some heavier showers up here towards Kuwait, as well as into parts of Iran. Over here towards Abu Dhabi, about 32, Muscat, 29.
The army has to prove they have no intentions of hijacking power and of keeping any remnants of the old regime.
From people making the news.
The earthquake happened over a year ago. Now you want to come back and help your fellow Haitians?
To those it affects.
If Washington doesn't begin to help stabilize the government, it will create a backlash.
Behind the headlines.
Neither the United States nor China can hurt the other without hurting itself.
Is the inside story. At this time on Al Jazeera.